This is the story of the last patient. I never liked the night shift, but I learned to survive it. The quiet could almost feel peaceful if you didn't think too hard about what might be hiding in it. That night, rain tapped gently against the tall windows, turning the glass into mirrors that reflected the dim fluorescent lights behind me. The hallway stretched long and empty, smelling faintly of bleach and something metallic that never seemed to go away, no matter how many times the janitors cleaned. One of the overhead lights near the nurse's station flickered at irregular intervals, casting a stuttered shadow every time it blinked off, and the sound it made, a faint electric buzz, felt like the hospital's own breathing. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I first heard them. Footsteps, slow, soft, coming from the east wing. I froze with my pen hovering above the chart I'd been filling out, waiting to hear them again. That wing had been closed for months after the last patient there passed away. Nobody had any reason to be there, especially not at this hour. I told myself it was probably just pipes shifting with the storm, or maybe security doing a late check. But my gut twisted in a way that told me I was lying to myself. I grabbed the small flashlight from my pocket and stepped into the hallway. The beam cut a pale cone through the darkness as I aimed it toward the east wing. The corridor beyond was empty, just polished linoleum gleaming dully, and that damn flickering light casting a weak pulse. Still, I heard them again. Heel, toe, heel, toe. Deliberate, unhurried, moving away from me. I called out, "Hello, security?" My voice came back to me in a hollow echo. No answer. I should have called the guard desk right then. I should have stayed put. But instead, I found myself walking forward, one step at a time, as if something was pulling me down that hallway. The air seemed thicker there, and my footsteps sounded too loud, bouncing off the walls and coming back to me like they belonged to someone else. Halfway down the corridor, I saw it. Light coming from under the door of room 12. That room had been dark since the day they wheeled the last patient out. My throat went dry. I reached the door and hesitated. The light was steady, warm, almost inviting. My fingers were cold as I pressed against the wood and nudged it open. The air inside was noticeably colder, enough to make goosebumps rise along my arms. The bed was neatly made, sheets crisp as though they'd been turned down for a new admission. But we hadn't had anyone scheduled in this wing for months. On the bedside table sat a patient chart, its pages slightly curled from moisture. I stepped closer and flipped it open. The name at the top was smeared, illegible, but the date was yesterday's, and then someone exhaled right next to my ear. I spun around so fast, the flashlight almost slipped from my hand. But there was no one there, just the empty room behind me. The light above flickered once, then went out completely, plunging me into darkness. I stumbled backward into the hallway, heart hammering so loudly it drowned out everything else. For a moment, there was only silence, and then a soft, calm voice came from further down the wing, from somewhere deep in the shadows. "Come back." Every light in the hallway flickered at once, buzzing like angry insects before flaring back to life. I ran. My shoes squeaked against the linoleum as I bolted back toward the nurse's station, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly. But the footsteps came again, this time behind me, faster, as though whatever was making them had started to follow. I could almost feel the air shift with each step. When I dared to glance back, I saw the door to room 12 swinging slowly shut on its own. No one was touching it. By the time I reached the nurse's station, I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone to call security. They arrived within minutes, 2 big men with flashlights and radios. I tried to explain what I'd seen, what I'd heard, but they just nodded like they'd heard it all before and gestured for me to follow them back. When we reached room 12, the door was wide open. The lights were off. The bed was stripped bare, mattress showing, no chart on the table, nothing to suggest the room had been touched in months. One of the guards checked the whole wing, every door, every corner, and found nothing. "You probably just heard the pipes," one of them said with a shrug. "Or maybe the wind. This wing makes weird noises when it storms." I nodded like I believed him, but I didn't. I could still feel that cold air in my lungs, still hear that calm voice whispering, "Come back," like an invitation. For the rest of the shift, I stayed glued to the station, refusing to go near the east wing again. But every so often, out of the corner of my eye, I swore I saw light glowing faintly from under room 12's door. A week later, I worked another night shift. I promised myself I wouldn't think about what happened, wouldn't let fear get the better of me. But at exactly 2 a.m., as if on cue, I heard them again. Those soft, measured footsteps starting in the east wing and slowly, steadily making their way toward me. This time, I didn't grab my flashlight. I didn't move at all. I just sat there, frozen, listening as they came closer and closer until it sounded like someone was standing right outside the nurse's station. And then they stopped. The hallway was silent for a full minute before the intercom crackled overhead and a voice I didn't recognize whispered through the static. "Room 12 is ready." The light above my desk flickered once, then went out. I've been reassigned since then, moved to a different floor, but I still think about that night. Sometimes, when the hospital is very quiet, I hear those same footsteps coming down the hall, no matter which floor I'm on. And I know, if I ever go back to room 12, I won't be coming out again. This is the story of Down the Service Hall. I've been working nights at the hospital for almost 7 years now. I like it. The quiet, the empty hallways, the freedom to work at my own pace with no one breathing down my neck. Most of my job is simple. Mop the floors, wipe the counters, empty the trash. But the thing about working the night shift is you get to know every corner of the building, every sound it makes when it settles, every flicker of every dying light bulb. That's why I noticed when something changed. It was a Wednesday night, dead quiet except for the hum of the vending machine near the break room. I was pushing my cart toward the service elevator when I noticed a door that had never been there before. At least, I was sure it hadn't. It was metal, painted the same dull cream color as the walls, and it sat flush with the hallway. No sign, no label, nothing. I stood there for a minute, just staring at it. The handle was old, a little rusted, and when I pressed my ear to the door, I could swear I heard something faint, a steady dripping sound, like water hitting concrete. I told myself it was probably just a maintenance closet. But curiosity got the better of me. I turned the handle. It was cold enough to make me flinch, but it turned easily, and the door swung open on silent hinges. Inside was a narrow hallway I had never seen before. The walls were unpainted concrete, damp in places, and the air smelled faintly of mildew and something sharper, like disinfectant that had gone stale. The lights overhead buzzed weakly, a row of old fluorescent tubes that flickered on one by one, as if waking up after a long sleep. I should have shut the door and walked away. But there was something about that hallway that pulled at me. My cart sat forgotten as I stepped inside, my shoes squeaking faintly on the wet floor. The door swung shut behind me with a soft click. The hallway stretched farther than I expected, bending slightly to the left. There were doors on either side, all closed, each with a small square window too fogged over to see through. I walked slowly, running my fingers along the rough wall, feeling the moisture gather on my skin. Then I heard it, a soft shuffle, like someone dragging their feet just around the corner. "Hello?" My voice sounded too loud in the narrow space. No answer. I kept walking. The dripping sound I'd heard earlier was louder now, and I realized it wasn't just water. There was a faint metallic tang to the air, the smell of rust or blood. I turned the corner and saw that the hallway went on even farther, and at the very end, one door stood slightly ajar, light spilling from inside. Something about that open door made the hair on my arm stand on end. I should have left. I know that now. But I walked toward it, one step at a time, my heart thudding in my chest. As I got closer, I heard voices, low, murmuring, too quiet to make out. I pushed the door open slowly. The room inside was large, maybe some kind of old storage area. There were metal tables scattered around, most of them covered with dusty white sheets. The light overhead buzzed loudly, swinging slightly as if stirred by a breeze I couldn't feel. The voices stopped the moment I stepped inside. I took one step forward, then another. One of the sheets moved, just a little, like someone had brushed past it from underneath. "Is someone here?" My voice shook. Silence. I reached out and pulled the sheet back. Nothing. Just an empty table. But on the wall above it, someone had scrawled something in dark red letters. At first, I thought it was graffiti, but when I got closer, I saw it was fresh. The streak still glistened under the light. "Leave while you can." The moment I read it, every light in the room went out. I froze, heart hammering, swallowed by pitch darkness. Then, from somewhere in the room, a chair scraped across the floor. I ran. I don't even remember how I found the door again. But somehow, I stumbled back into the hallway, slamming it behind me. The corridor lights flickered, then all went dark, except the very last one, far away near the entrance. I sprinted toward it, my footsteps loud in the narrow space. Behind me came the sound of many feet running, too many, like a crowd chasing me. I didn't look back. When I reached the first door, I yanked it open and burst into the main hallway of the hospital. The lights here were bright, normal, almost painfully so. When I turned around, the door I had come through was gone. Just a blank stretch of wall where it had been. I stood there gasping, trying to convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing. But when I looked down, I saw wet footprints leading from where I stood back toward the spot where the door had been. Too many footprints, as if dozens of people had followed me out. I wheeled my cart back to the supply closet and sat there for the rest of the shift, listening for any sound from that direction. I never found that door again, no matter how many times I checked. But sometimes, late at night, when the hospital is quiet, I hear that faint dripping sound start up somewhere behind the walls, and I know the hallway is still there, waiting This is the story of the locked elevator. I had been working at the hospital for 6 months when I found the elevator. It wasn't really hidden, just tucked behind a supply closet door that was usually kept shut. That night, I was covering the graveyard shift alone on the surgical floor, catching up on charts and walking the halls to keep myself awake. At around 2:45 a.m., I heard something that made me pause. A faint mechanical hum, low and steady, coming from behind that supply door. I opened it. Behind the usual shelves of gauze and cleaning supplies, there was another door I'd never seen before. Heavy, metallic, with a worn service lift sign bolted above it. My ID badge didn't scan. The light on the panel was dead, but when I touched the call button, the elevator arrived anyway. The doors opened with a hiss, revealing a small, narrow lift lit by a single weak fluorescent bulb. Inside, the panel had buttons numbered from B to 7, plus one scratched-out button where the label was missing entirely. I should have shut the closet and walked away, but the air around me was strangely still, and I felt like I was being watched, as though something was waiting to see if I'd step inside. So I did. The doors closed slowly, almost reluctantly, sealing me in. The smell inside was faintly metallic, like rust. I pressed 1 just to test it, but the elevator lurched downward instead. The display stayed blank. When it stopped, the doors opened to a hallway I'd never seen before. It was long, narrow, lined with peeling cream-colored paint and buzzing overhead lights. The tiles were old, cracked, wet in places, as if someone had just mopped. But the air was cold and smelled like mold. I stepped out. There was no sign telling me which floor I was on. No nurse's station, no sound of machines. Just the slow drip, drip, drip of water somewhere farther down. Then I heard something, faint like footsteps, but uneven, dragging. "Hello," I called, my voice low, too loud in the silence. No answer. I turned back toward the elevator, but the doors slid shut before I reached them. The call button was dead, no light, no sound. I walked down the hall, telling myself there had to be a stairwell somewhere. Every few feet there was a door on either side, each one closed. Some had small wired glass windows, but when I tried to peer through them, the glass was so fogged I couldn't see anything. One door was slightly open, creaking as if someone had just stepped through. I swallowed hard and pushed it gently. Inside was a room with a single bed frame bolted to the floor, mattress gone, walls stained with dark watermarks that reached almost to the ceiling. There was a chair in the corner, facing the bed. Sitting on it was a folded patient gown, clean, pressed, with a name tag pinned to it. The name tag had my name on it. I stumbled back, heart hammering. That's when I heard the elevator ding. I ran back, but when the doors opened, the inside